Hello, this is a quick build guide for how to play generic Slam Ignite Elementalist in 326. So the main changes they made for this ascendancy are to the 3 Shaper nodes, which are really important for the tankiness of the build, because previously your go-to setup would have been you take Bastion of Elements along with a decent Molten Shell, and that's pretty much all you have, along with like max resistances until way, way later when you can start getting suppression and running doppelganger guys. But this league, what they did is they did a couple things. They made 2 changes to Shaper of Flames and Shaper of Storms, which are going to be reflected in the configuration. The first thing they did is they got rid of the line that says you deal more damage with ignites for hits where the highest damage type is fire, which isn't as bad of a change as it sounds, because early on you're going to be using different skills to get around certain problems, and you're going to be using different items. Like, for instance, you'll be using Ming's Heart, which gives you a ton of Visage Extra Chaos, and you can use Diadian Dawn. But the problem is you have to fully convert your damage, which necessitates either taking Mastery with a Fire skill, and none of the Fire Slams are super good except Protect Slam and Cataclysm, which has the problem of needing Enduring Composure Megalo with Echoes of Creation early on. So you're not going to do that on a budget. So it gets rid of that problem, and what it does instead is you get, whenever you ignite an enemy, that enemy converts 40% of their physical damage to fire. This is multiplicative with sources on you that say when you take damage, you convert to a different damage type. So it's not additive, it's not as insane as I thought it would be, but it's still really, really good early on. So you always take this anyways because you have to take it. And the other change they made for tankiness is with Shaper of Winter. So basically everything past the first line was deleted, and instead what it does is your chill basically applies shock effect as well as a separate line. Basically, enemies take increased damage based on your chill effect, and they also deal less damage, equal half your chill effect. So the reason this is important is it's another layer of just taking less damage. So that's two layers off things you would take anyways. Now the third thing they did is with Shaper of Storms. They got rid of the more lightning effect, which is who cares, but they buffed the minimum shock from 15 to 25%. So this pretty much takes over. Like, you're taking all 3 of these nodes on an Ignite build if you're not running Deadly Ailments. If you're running Deadly Ailments, you probably don't take Shaper of Winter, because otherwise you have to path towards one of these masteries and take... Assuming by the time this is released, they haven't deleted this mastery, but chills from your hits always reduce action speed by at least 10%. You can take that and still always get something out of it. But the route we're going instead is we're just building to have a large enough base hit, and we're also building to eventually get enough ailment effect that even on pinnacle bosses, not uber pinnacle bosses, because, I mean, this build just doesn't really... It's not really an uber boss farmer the way it was last league, because they deleted the Doomfletch Mace enchant, which sucks, but this build is still very, very viable all the way through T7 map farming once T17 map farming once you really get it going. But this is more how you would level it up and how you'd start taking it through maps. So, you would level this pretty much. You just take all this stuff and level it as a generic Wave of Conviction build until you get some of the core items for this, which the main weapon you want is this weapon. This is like a T5 unique. It's 1C. Nobody fucking uses it. You could probably buy enough of them to corrupt them if you wanted to go for like Fortify or something, or increase attack speed, because you're going to notice its base attack speed is garbage. It's 1.15. The reason you use this is because it's of 3 things. 1, it's a decent stat stick. It just gives you a lot of base hit damage, and it actually gives you resistances too. The other thing is it saves you a point by not having to take Resolute Technique. It has hits can't be evaded naturally. It gives you a little bit of movement speed if you're critting, but given the way this build works right now at this budget, it's not going to be going off that often. But it also lets you take Elemental Overload. So if you really want to maximize that, you would be, instead of using Ice Crash, you would be using Earthquake, because Earthquake doubles up on the chance to hit every time you attack. You get 2 instead of 1. And you would have to use a different belt. You would probably be using... I don't remember the name of that one belt. It's the one that gives all res, elemental damage, while you have a flask active, and like some flat damage of all 3. It's pretty good. But the reason in this this item set works the way it does is we'll just go over every unique. So Congore's Undying Rage we already went over. It's just giga cheap. Geoffrey's Sanctuary is also like a T5 unique. It's really common. Gives you a little bit of max life, gives you a decent chunk of armor and energy shield, gives you all res, and because we're scaling so much, well, not so much, but enough strength, we're getting a decent chunk of flat energy shield out of this. And we also get Zealot's Oath, which is important because our main way early on of mitigating damage is Mind Over Matter with Eldritch Battery. Well, Eldritch Battery is more for mana cost, because you can see we can't cast shit without it. So that was the order it went. It went, we have Eldritch Battery, so we need to build some mana, or some energy shield. And then we may as well make it tank stuff, but the problem is, if it's tanking stuff, it's not recharging, and we don't really have any ways to kickstart that. We don't want to use Devouring Diadem, which I don't even think works with this. You're not going to get DD early. So, the way we get around that is getting Zealot's Oath, either through Geoffrey's Sanctuary as a unique, super cheap, or you use Unique Flask Soar the Divine, which gives you Zealot's Oath during its effect, and it makes your life flask also recover energy shield. That's an option. I don't think it's worth it personally. I think the better option is just to take the body armor, because it's super cheap, frees up a better flask slot, and you just take Vitality and get some life regen on your gear. I think I have, yeah, some on this and this. It's all this stuff is really cheap. So that's solving your ES sustain. You're splitting damage between the two, so your max hit isn't terrible for the price point. Like, each item, like, this is super cheap. This is just a damage steroid. Day 1, it's probably going to be a little expensive, especially if you're going for a higher roll, but if you just want one that works, you can go for it. The alternative to Ming's Heart is obviously Polaris Devastation, but that's probably not going to show up till like day 2 or 3, because people need to start actually getting to... Well, it'll show up a couple times in the first 12 hours, but it's going to be really expensive because like the speedrunners would be the ones dropping it. So, yeah. And the Diadian Dawn is just attack ignite builds. It's really good. All these uniques give you a ton of resistances. You have 2 items providing you all res. You have this giving you a huge chunk of fire and cold res. This gives you a ton of chaos res, which early on can be hard to get. So being able to just get a ton of one item, and especially because your other rare items aren't really requiring a lot of mandatory affixes, means you can just super easily cap all your resistances, and then you have rooms for some other stuff you want. So yeah, the items are pretty much just, you get life resistances, you get a little bit of dexterity because you need it for one of the things needs it, I don't remember what. Rallying Cry is the only one that needs some dexterity. If you run Unbound Ailments on your links instead, I think it needs a little more. That's an option. It lowers your hit damage, which is kind of important, because overkill damage is really important for Herald of Ash. You one-shot something, everything near it is also going to burn in 1 game tick. It's why we don't use Deadly Ailments in this for 2 reasons. Because Deadly Ailments kills your overkill damage, and it kills your chill effect. If you put that on, your chill effect is going to be dog shit. So, especially with reworked Shaper or Winter, you don't want that. So you're just trying to get big juicy slams you will have immunity to elemental reflect, so you don't have to worry about that. If you use any other skill that doesn't fully convert, you do have to worry about phase reflect, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, Eldritch Battery solves all your mana costs, so you don't have to worry early on about getting mana reduction on your rings, especially depending on where they moved the non-channeling mana cost ring craft. Like, we don't know where that is. It could be all the way in like tier 14, 15, 16 maps. So early on, just Eldritch Battery with Zealot's Oath and some life regen will solve that pretty handily. You have Determination for some additional tankiness. It gets your Molten Shell up. If you get more levels, you would just path into maximum resistances, and you could take some max res on your jewels. These are just... because your attack speed is going to be so low because Ice Crash is a slow skill, you want to prioritize increased life and attack speed with Mace's Receptors. These will fix the build feeling sort of clunky. If you can find rooms somewhere you can put Blood Rage in, just keep in mind it will start taxing your energy shield and you won't regenerate any of the life cost from it. So you have to deal with that. Like if it just found like a level 1 blood, that's level 1 Blood Rage. Yeah, we start losing 90 life per second, and it taxes us about 60 ES per second. It does give you, if you quality it up, it does give you a sizable amount of attack speed though, and it gets you frenzy charges on kill, which is a pretty big mapping buff. And if you take a look at the rings, if you really don't need the non-channeling craft, which chances are you won't need it, and you can somehow find the minimum frenzy charge node earlier, you could take that. Or if you find a veiled amethyst ring with like with some dexterity, I guess you don't really need that. You could get a 4 module with dex, so you could get life, regen, veiled suffix. If you can find that veiled suffix with frenzy charge on kill, you don't need Blood Rage, and that would pretty much set you up. Same thing applies to the amulet. The amulet only really needs 1 veiled suffix, and that's just to cover lightning and chaos res, because you're gonna have like borderline cat fire and cold res just from the rest of your stuff. Another thing I should have mentioned with the helmet, there's a unique item you can use instead, but it's going to screw over your mana reservation, so you just need to take this cluster. It's another 3 points. If you're under point pressure, you're gonna have to find somewhere else to yank them out, but you can use Hrimnor's Resolve, which gives you a nice chunk of cold res. It doesn't have energy shield, so it does kind of brick your... And there's a mastery we're using that gives us more energy shield and armor. If all your stuff is armor ES, it's pretty good early on, but it doesn't work if you use this. But the reason you would use this is because you cannot be frozen or chilled if you use a fire skill recently. This is important because you use Infernal Cry pretty often, and the recently is like 4 seconds, so you can... Early on, I don't think the cooldown is fast enough. Infernal Cry should be at level 20 as soon as we find it. The cooldown is... yeah, 8 seconds, so you're only going to have it up about half the time, but you could, instead of running Frostblink, you could run Flame Dash. I'm not a big fan of it, but it is an option. Or if you decide to use a Fire Slam instead, again, that's an option. I am not sure if Arcanist Brand triggering skills or like if triggers work with Hrimnor's Resolve, because it says if you've used. So I'm gonna err on the side of it probably doesn't work that way, but it is a kind of clunky option for getting freeze and chill immunity early on. So, that option is there. And yeah, this setup should take you pretty comfortably through T16s. The thing to note though is there's a couple of conditionals for your damage. Obviously, um, one of the big ones is that if you run hexproof maps, your flammability is not going to work, and that's going to carve off. That's the wrong one. Yeah, that's going to carve off like a large chunk of your bossing DPS because that's where you're getting a lot of resistance down on. Like it's kind of huge. So if you run hexproof maps, just be aware your bosses are going to take a lot longer to kill. There's also the thing of using Fist of War and Ruthless in the same link setup. This is with a 5 link with Fortify because Fortify is just defensive layer. It's really good. But if you do not line these up, like if you go to Ruthless average instead of max, it takes a pretty big chunk out of your damage. So just when you're fighting a tanky enemy, don't be afraid to take your time because your ignite duration is long enough. I think your ignite duration is still like... only 2... Right! We don't have Polaric Devastation or Unbound Ailments on this setup. So yeah, using one of those would bump it up significantly, but your attack rate only needs to, like, the ignite duration only really needs to be the same as the attack rate unless you need to play super safe, so it's fine. I play this in 325, it's really good. The ignite duration being longer just makes the ignite prolif from gloves or fan the flames way more comfy because the corpses you leave will burn for longer, so anything, like if you're doing harbingers spawning monsters on top of the corpses, they will pop immediately. It doesn't affect things like Herald of Ashes ignite burn effect, which is its own separate like enemy corpse leaves, or wherever the enemy died, it leaves a burning zone, I think is how it works. I'm not 100% sure. I've never paid attention to it. Could look at the wording. I'm not going to, but ignite duration good. You're not going to have a lot of it early on because you're just trying to get the basic stuff running, and this is only on a 5 link. On a 6 link, you could get a lot more damage out of it, like 34% more damage, or you get comfier unbound ailments. You can get slightly less damage, doesn't contribute to your hit, but it makes your baseline chill a lot more effective. So the way you'd be funding this up is, I can show you what you want for the goal. This is a lot higher budget, so like just keep that in mind. So this is what it looks like when you get it to a way higher price point. Obviously it's not going to be dot capping at Ubers like it did last league, but your defensive layers are shifting from building some max res. You want to start building into... one of the first really important things is getting Divine Flesh, because that makes elemental penetration on monsters a lot less scary. But if you're going to be using that, you want to use Doppelganger guys, because if you max roll this, it's just 40% less in physical damage, chaos damage taken, which is basically 20% less elemental damage taken because of the half conversion. And it also takes even more out of physical damage, and it makes your armor more effective. So it's really strong. Like, this body armor is pretty much how you make the build work. So for other items that are really important, Echoes of Creation is just your main damage steroid. It's so much damage that you can't not use it. And if you're going to be self-hitting, it gives you a little bit of regen from this, which is nice every time you attack. And it would also proc Enduring Composure, which is possibly the most... it's just so silly of a notable you can get on Megalomaniac, especially. Because Megalomaniac, the other mod that you would want to make your reservation comfy and not have to make some weird compromises is you use Uncompromising along with that. So your determination has more, it doesn't use as much mana, and you can fit all of your stuff. The stuff we're using is just Herald of Ash, Purity, Determination. Level 4 Enlighten is expensive, but by the time you get to this price point, it's kind of whatever. And then you still have your auto exerts, so that's why there's kind of some pressure. But we're also at level 100 and not using this mana reservation node, so we're pretty much only taking this to get our mana cost just low enough that in the time it takes to attack, our mana regen picks up just enough that a max level Flam ability can still actually cast. You might want a tiny bit more on reserved mana, like might want like 70 to make that more comfortable, but should be fine. So your mitigation here is pretty much that, plus you're running Defiance of Destiny in your amulet. You can use Ashes if you're using certain skills. If you use Tectonic Slam of Cataclysm for Uber bosses, you would definitely use that instead, unless you're fighting something like Searing Exarch and trying not to die to the Blazing Salvo he does. But I would not recommend trying to tank that anyways, because we don't yet have cap spell suppression on this. There is a way to do that. You go to the middle here, you take Mage Bane, you go here and use the Green Nightmare. It gives you like 40-50% suppression, and then you get the rest of it just by adding more dexterity to your gear wherever you can fit it. It's kind of hard to do that, but it's possible. So yeah, just ignore this 38 number. It can get to like 90%, almost 100%. You shouldn't be trying to tank big boss slams anyways, so just getting to like 90% is going to make your mapping a lot more comfortable, and your max hit is just high enough that even in tier 17s, most things won't one-shot you, especially if you get crit immunity, which isn't that hard, because we're running Sublime Vision for Determination, you can get a really funny Watcher's Eye for it, which I don't think I have slotted in here because I'm stupid. Hang on, let me just yank out one of these for a Watcher's Eye. Did I actually forget it? Yes, I did. So yeah, Watcher's Eye can give you these 3 mods. You're not going to necessarily find a 3 mod with all 3 of these. That's going to be ludicrously expensive because there are other people who also play only Determination. But of these, the most important mods would just be the bottom 2, additional phys reduction and reduced damage from crits. If you get those 2, you just take you get those and you corrupt your body armor for 50% reduced damage, and you are immune to crits. So that's really good. Oriath's End props up your clear like nothing else, because you're pretty much exclusively trying to just scale elemental damage off your clusters. You get enough of it that it'll, whenever an enemy explodes, or even just 2 enemy explodes, it'll kill the rest of the pack, and it does enough ignite damage that there's the video on my screen on my channel, and there's another person who ran the same build. They ran Earthquake instead, and they funded up to a Mage Blood. I didn't do that last league because I just didn't play long enough for it, but it's just a really good flask. The alternative this league is you would have less quality, but you could go for a synthesized Karimal with Explode, which again is probably going to be a pretty cheap base because not that many people play this, especially without the Doomfletch enchant, but it should work just fine. So yeah, ideally if you want to get a Corrupt for this, you want to roll something like this. The damage you take per slam doesn't matter that much. Like the top line for each Warcry doesn't matter because you're tanky enough to mitigate it by 90% almost all the time anyways. Just if you're running blue altars, be wary of the minus physical damage reduction node, because like on any build that stacks a lot, it's a scary node, but especially on this one, our max life pool is not that huge, so just don't take it. Unless you're super confident or suicidal, one of the two. Anyways, you want burning damage, max life, or fire damage, leeches life. Fire damage? Ice Crash? You get something along those lines. Fire damage still work because of Infernal Cry, but yeah, it's fine. Just go for burning damage and life on your helmet. On this, obviously, you want AoE gems and this, or just +1 gems in this. It's really strong. Defiance of Destiny. It's a tier 0 unique. You're probably not going to be corrupting these, but if you really, really wanted to, you could go for additional curse, max res, anything like that. Anything that basically lightens up pressure on your resistances would be good. Here we're running Darkness and Throne because it's not Mage Blood, but if you're running a Mage Blood, it obviously just warps the build a lot. But Darkness and Throne lets us do a couple things. It lets us get shock and stun immunity for relatively cheap. You would have 2 of each of these mods if you're not running 100%. If you're running 100%, you only need the one with like a decent max life roll. You get a little bit of flat mana regen because a little bit goes a long way for this build. Try to get something like this. One of these existed last league and I managed to get it for cheap, but your mileage is definitely going to vary on that. And the second one, you would just get stuff like this. Like you get a decent chunk of flat armor because it'll go a long way. A little bit of life, cover the rest of your stun immunity. And then the last suffix is like, if it's something useful, you take it. So yeah, other things of note are Balance of Terror with manual cast Elemental Weakness is really good. These aren't that hard to get for cheap because, again, people usually don't play builds that take advantage of these. I think if people run them, they take other stuff. It might be more expensive this league because if they nerf Sanctum's currency generation, there might not be as many people running this, so you might just, like, the 2 mods just probably won't exist if people stop running Sanctum, but the 1 mod should still exist. It'll be more expensive, but it's doable. If you're taking Forbidden Flame and Flesh, you just take Heart of Destruction because it gives you a lot more AoE and clear, and on bosses it gives you a lot more damage. It's a no-brainer, really. Because we don't take the Exposure node, because we don't path that way. We take Bastion of Elements and 3 Shapers. So if you want that, this is how you get this. I don't think there's really any other better options. Occultist won't have shit. The Herald node is not useful for this because it gives us a little bit more reservation, but it's not worth 2 jewel sockets. You can just get generic reservation off of rare jewels if you're that desperate. And the goal, like, you just don't have the sockets for the golem node. The golem node would be really nice, but the golems tend to die even in like super juice stuff, even with elemental damage immunity, because they only have like 11-12k life each, and not much in the way of fizz mitigation on their end, except for your own determination aura. But if you're running juicy content, they will still die. So yeah, this is just the way you would do it. You take these 3, they're not allocated because they're in the custom config, which is just the stuff. This is for 30 chill, and this is... I don't think this bottom line actually works. It says it's blue, but it doesn't work. But you can hit 50 shock on every hit anyways if you have, with this link set up, you have a level 6 Awaken Unbound Ailments gets you 70% increased effect of ailments, and then you get the remaining... Assuming these small nodes are still the exact same, you have 80% for Cold and Lightning off these, and then you get the remaining 20 from here. So it's just 100% increased ailment effect, and that gets you 25 to 50, and it means you're very likely to inflict, especially at this higher price point, you're very likely to just cap chill on everything that matters that you can actually run. So yeah, you take those. Sublime Vision. There'll probably be more people running Shaper because the Shaper Exalted Orbs, those exist now. Presumably they'll drop from Uber Shaper, and presumably Uber Elder as well. So this might actually go down in price because there'll be more people running it. Storm Shout is just a given. That's part of the Darkness and Throne setup, the reason you run it. If you run a Mage Blood, you would still run it for ailment immunity. When you get higher in the price point for Glorious Vanity, what you want to do is you want to look for like more Chaos Res on the small nodes. You could look for fire damage. You could look for fizz damage. Like anything that contributes to those. You just use the Timeless Jewel Searcher for that, and yeah, that's pretty much the build. You just go around slamming things. You don't. Oh yeah. One of the main things is you're gonna notice we don't use the heist mace, and we don't take this. So you're gonna be wondering what the fuck are you doing with intimidating cry uptime? The uptime doesn't matter in anything except bosses, because this build like it's going to mulch maps. Like you're gonna slam the general direction of something, and like 3 generations of his family is going to explode, like on the other side of the map. So it really doesn't matter. So you don't even need 5 war cries all the time. Like you just pop Infernal Cry, and like when you run across a tanky unique enemy or a boss or something, then you pop Intimidating Cry and just make sure it's lined up with Ruthless and Fist of War, and the boss will die in a couple seconds. But on that note, there are some map mods that we don't run. If we are not running a slam that fully converts to elemental, we obviously don't run Phase Reflect because we will just die if we slam. Like if you're running Tech Slam Cataclysm and you don't tick the convert to fire damage mastery here, you will die if you slam. If you run Leap Slam and you run that, you will die. Like you can probably fit Leap Slam in here somewhere. I'm not gonna try and figure that out, but I have seen people do that. You can do it, but if you run Fizz Reflect, you will die. So you just don't run that unless you're running like Ice Crash or fully converting without Leap Slam. We do not run cooldown reduction maps, like cooldown recovery, because that screws up our auto exertion. In theory, you can still do it, but because we use overexertion, like your damage is going to be really, really low. So unless you're running easier content like T16 Strand, like 8 mod T16, farming Harbinger's Delirium, whatever, like you could still get away with that at this budget. But if you're at this budget, you're probably trying to do T17s, so you just don't run that mod. There's a bunch of the generic annoying hazards in T17. Of note, like, enemies are immortal for 3 seconds every 10 seconds, or whatever that mod is. You don't run that because it will get super laggy if you ignite a ton of enemies at once and they don't die. So, don't do that. Cannot regen. I would not recommend, because you get a decent amount of regen. Enduring Cry is kind of propping this up, so it shouldn't be there. But you have enough that you probably don't want to run that. Anything that reduces your physical damage reduction, you probably want to be careful with. But you could, in theory, still run it. You just have to be aware of how many war cries you're exerting with, so you don't kill yourself by accident. Like, this applies to Blue After maps. Let me just go take a look at the thing real quick. I think that might have screwed up my source, but I'm just looking at the map regex. Give me a moment. Things that outright disable the build. Other than war cries getting screwed up by that one. Oh yeah, players have less effect. Don't run that. That will brick you entirely because it affects your explosions, your ignites, proliferation, and your basic attack radius. I have ran a map that way one time by accident. It was really funny. I would never ever recommend someone do that. Anyways, in theory, you can run less defenses, because the only thing it's affecting is your armor, which, well, your armor is really important for Molten Shell. As long as you're killing enemies fast enough, again, it doesn't really matter. Because you still have enough generic physical damage reduction that you won't kill yourself that way. Like, you have Endurance charges, you have Fortify, you have you have doppelganger guys. I'm kind of losing the track a little bit here because this video has been running for I don't know how long now. We're gonna find out when I stop recording, but yeah, there's not that many maps, not that many mods that outright brick you. Like, you can even do the reduced action speed one because you're not actually using that many skills that often. You're going to be a little slow and you'll feel it, but it's not unrunnable. You just have to be aware of the map mods that are really rippy. Like, if you're doing 4 mod Delirium Orb maps, I would probably not do anything that gives, like, the boss a lot more tank, because at that point you're going to be really running into the fact that this is still a damage over time build. It's not a 3 comma damage build. It is low 2 commas. So just keep in mind the limits of the build. Like, you're here to kind of speed clear things. Not well, I'd say quote unquote speed clear, but there are obviously better builds for that. But you are here because you want to play Slam Ignite Hammer Witch, and I am down for that. So yeah, this is the Giga build. This is the low level one. The low level one, you basically just get a few uniques that are really cheap. One of them slightly less cheap, but it's more damage. You get like 3 modules to prop up your life and attack speed. If you can find it, you get dot multi. Cover your life and resists. Make sure that shit's covered. Make sure you have a large enough energy shield pool. If you have 3k life, with Mind Over Matter, you want about 1200 energy shield, and you want to prop up your ES regen, so it's about 50% of that, just to cover the demands of early maps. You could, in theory, 6-link this mace, but you can get a much better mace at that point just by, like, we got 2-handed maces you can get, especially with we have recombinators. Like, the Recombinator's still in the game. I don't understand how they left the old one in the game. It's insane. Like, the PoE 2 one, I understand the matting, but you can make something like fucking this without too much trouble with the Recombinator. And if you fracture dot multi, which again depends on the price of fracturing orbs, but you can also just kind of find them fractured at like T2 dot multi for not that expensive, for not that much. And then you just like do 3 crafted mods, or not 3 crafted mods. You would actually not want that. You would want attack speed. You'd probably try to fill this third one like early on with just like T5 or higher of this. Go for like T2 of this, and then you craft 5 damage over the time multiplier. Over time. So you craft that. You use Resolute Technique, but you don't have this. Add this. And yeah, this will be about that much more damage. 6 million Ignite DPS there over Kongors, which is about 3.6, but it's also kind of a lie because you're not going to always have Elemental Overload. So getting a decent weapon will just basically double your damage. It's not that difficult. You get fracture dot multi, and then you essence spam for T2, T1, like Tyrannical Merciless, hopefully with an open prefix. Then you just try to lock prefixes and reforge fizz for the last one. Especially because with the change, if you get leech on your suffix, which is kind of annoying that can happen now, but it can no longer fill as that prefix. So it's more likely that if it fills the prefix, it's going to be hybrid fizz, which is really good for crafting these. Or you just do your Recombinator way, which is you just throw weapons together until you have triple T1 in the middle. and hope that the fracture stays. It's a much more tedious process, but it's still, by the time you get to that price point, within the realm of possibilities, so it's pretty good. And once you get to high enough price point, you could start swapping on, if you have an Overlord cluster, you swap out Fortify here for Awaken Unbound Ailments, which isn't on here because of that setting. And yeah, the builds should be pretty cheap. Like, each one of these jewels should be maybe 10C first day or two. Like, after day 2, they'll probably drop to like 1C, because unless this build suddenly takes off, no one fucking plays it. People are probably gonna be playing like Zerker, Champion, or other stuff, so Ignite builds, like Ignite gear, will probably be cheap. Ming's Heart might not be cheap, because there's always some builds that use it. So this is probably the most expensive item out of everything, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. And then yeah, just get armor, energy shield bases, which are usually cheap because not that many builds run armor, energy shield on all their slots. So you just get resistance, life, movement speed, whatever else you need, and it should work. Anyways, if you somehow stuck through this long, through my sleep-deprived rambling about this build, I hope you enjoyed it. I would include some gameplay footage, but I'm way too lazy to do that right now. So, like, if you've ever seen any Wave of Conviction build, it's basically this, but slam flavored. It's that, but slam flavored. And we'll see what other stuff they do. If they add other cold masteries that maybe make pathing here for some reason worthwhile early on, like there's some merit to that. Maybe there's like, if you really feel you want it, you can always take the minimum chill effect, so you always get at least like, with this, I think you get a 12-15% chill, more if you're on Unbound Ailments, but whatever, it's fine. Anyways, thank you for sticking around. If you enjoyed the video, then leaving a comment on that would be nice. If enough people say they want to see the build after the league comes out, I can upload some footage of that. But yeah, thank you for listening all the way through if that's your thing. So I will hopefully see you guys later.